featuring Dr. Michael Ventris, meteorologist Sean Pratt, and your host, Colin Golzinski.
Okay, we'll try this again. Round 2, week 3. You know, we're not perfect at this production of live shows, even though we've got no viewers back, but it's okay. Welcome back. We'll try this again. Speed round. Made some mistakes.
Yeah. So the issue with the first one was we were echoing. Hopefully that is not the case now, and we fixed the problem.
Guys, I feel like this is a bad episode of Groundhog Day, that movie, because
Yeah. It feels that way. It feels a little surreal.
I just woke up again and we're doing the same thing. Here we go. Let's go. Week 3, guys. NFL.
Week 3, version 2.
Yeah. So,
All right.
let me just,
Let's
I'll
do
bring
it.
up.
Let's do it, Colin.
Yeah, so week 3, we are not seeing a big impact across the games. But like I said, we are seeing potential game with wind in Buffalo. So here's our chart that's on our website, and it's a great chart, guys. And for the third time today, we're going to talk about it.
Well, let me start off here on the chart and say that this updates twice a day. Okay, so if you come back to this chart tomorrow, there could be new weather. There's going to be new weather information that gets fed through the chart and goes through our algorithm to say if there's going to be any possible impacts due to weather and what those weather impacts are. So this is an example. It's updated today at 1 p.m. and shows the week 3, and it shows that pretty much we're all in the green, meaning that weather is predicted to be generally fair across most stadiums, and weather may not be a significant impact. But that being said, there's errors in our models, and there's a potential marginal game here that we're paying attention to that isn't highlighted by the table on this particular run, and that's the LA Rams at Buffalo Bills game, and there's a potential wind event there.
Yeah. So that's something we're going to be monitoring. We actually have a couple areas of low pressure, and typically low pressure means wind and precipitation, but these are fairly dry systems. They're really having a chance to develop. And the area that we're concerned with over Buffalo is associated with an area of low pressure over Canada, just south of the Hudson Bay area. So we're going to be focusing in on Buffalo over Western New York. And what we're looking at as 10-meter winds. So what that means is winds near the surface. And the colors that we want to be concerned with are when we start going into the lighter greens, yellows, and oranges. And right now, we're our borderlines. You may say, well, hey, usually when you guys show this, the stadium lights up orange and is a caution. And we don't have that here because it's not quite meeting our threshold. But like Mike mentioned, our models are not perfect. And actually, our models are having a little bit more confidence and being a little bit more bullish with the winds. So they're increasing their forecasted wind speeds just a bit.
Yeah, if you look at some of the higher resolution models, the ones that can resolve some of these features a little bit better, they're showing the winds could potentially go up to around 15, 17 miles per hour in Buffalo on Sunday afternoon. Right now, this particular model we're looking at is showing winds less than 15 miles per hour, maybe more in the realm of like around 10 miles per hour. That's what the green shading shows for Buffalo. So if winds get up into that 15, 17 mile per hour range in Buffalo Sunday afternoon, there's a chance that fantasy production is a little impacted here for either the Buffalo Bills or the LA Rams.
Yeah, and Mike mentioned a key number there. He said around the 15 mile an hour range. It's around 15, 16, 17 miles an hour is when we start to see impacts for fantasy players. And so Colin, looks like Colin, are you going to our blog quick?
I am.
All right,
am.
perfect. Look at this. It's like you've done this before, Colin.
Yeah, where have we seen this before? And he messed up this time too.
Oh man. All right, let's go to our weather blog. There we go. And we're going to be looking specifically at New Era Field in Buffalo. This just highlights a general weather forecast, 80 degrees. And the reason for that is we have a very strong south wind. So those winds are going to be really picking up over the Buffalo area. Again, we're forecasting 13 to 17. Again, the models are getting a little more bullish, those wind speeds. but we're not completely confident in them quite yet. The other thing is we're not going to get any precipitation here. Like I mentioned, it's pretty dry across the U.S. on Sunday. So the big question for us is what kind of impacts can we expect? And this is actually a picture of New Era Field, Bills Stadium. And you notice that it's very open. And one of the things worth mentioning is certain stadiums are more conducive to funneling the winds and making it more difficult. The old Giants Stadium was known for that. Winds would always be howling into that stadium. And so for this particular game, we're expecting QBs to have the really big, or the position to be really influenced here and have an impact.
So this brings us to our next. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike. I didn't mean to interrupt. You always have good things to say.
Just all I was going to say is not all stadiums are built equally, and those dynamics can change the wind flow going through them.
Exactly. And so what we did is we have another member of our fantasy football weather guys team, Nick Schiraldi, who's not with us today, but he's a lot behind the scenes. He's the behind the scene guy. He does a lot of our statistical analysis, looking at numbers, figuring out what is the impact due to weather. So we're going to show you a graph here.
I'm going to interrupt Sean right here. If he was running our production and our audio, we would not be filming 3 times in a day. I've already exaggerated too much. It was Troy. Okay, Sean, go ahead. What we got here?
Yeah, no, Nick is amazing. We really appreciate all the work he's doing. And this is just one of the things that we're coming across. Now, we are going to be hopefully building out a user interface where you'll be able to look at maps and numbers like this eventually somewhere in the future. But we have some prototypes we're developing, and what we wanted to forecast for this particular game is, okay, let's see how QBs are affected by wind at Buffalo Bills Stadium. So what we did is we pulled all wind events, so 17 or greater. We picked all games at Buffalo that have had 17-mile-an-hour winds or greater, and there was about 45 games that we were able to pull. All right, and so what we're looking at here, this may look like a bar chart or kind of like a line graph. We call this a frequency or density distribution chart. And essentially, the height of the bars tell us that something is happening more frequently. So the higher the bar, the more frequent it is, or more frequently it's happening. So we want to know, hey, what is the fantasy relationship? So what we plotted was fantasy points for quarterbacks on our x-axis. So Colin's pointing that out there. And then on the y-axis is our frequency, how often something happens. And the real take-home message here is that the more bars you have on the right side of the graph, that means the better the QBs are doing. The more bars you have and the higher the bars are on the left side of the graph, the worse the QB is doing because you get less fantasy points. And the big thing here is a lot of blues, we see a lot of orange. And what orange is our dome reference. And that is all games that have been played in a dome. And Mike, why do we care about dome games?
Well, there's no weather happening in dome games, guys. It's all controlled environment.
Yeah, there's no rain, there's no wind. It's a perfect temperature. There's nothing the players really have to worry about from a weather perspective. So this is the distribution of how fantasy quarterbacks do in a controlled weather environment. The question is, well, when you do introduce weather such as wind, how does that compare? And that's what we're doing here. And so the big message here is that, hey, a lot more blue on the left-hand side of the graph. So QBs typically are not doing quite as well. Their ceiling, we'll say, in the fantasy world is capped a bit. So you're not going to see typically some huge breakout 30, 40-point games for QBs when we have windy conditions.
Yeah, what's real interesting here is that we don't really see any points greater than 20 when we have significant winds in Buffalo, right? If you're not looking on our video, you're listening to our podcast version here. We typically see quarterbacks score between 0 and 20 points when there's 15 to 17 or 15 to 20 mile per hour winds in Buffalo. And when we look at controlled environment, you build your distribution where there's many people or many case events of 20 or more points. It can be up to 40, 50 points for quarterbacks can score on the upper end tails. So we don't really see that potential in these statistics when there's wind. And that means that you're going to have to be a little worried if you're starting guys that are playing in Buffalo this Sunday, right? If winds actually get to 17 miles per hour or greater in Buffalo on Sunday afternoon, you're going to have to be worried about Jared Goff. You're going to have to be worried about, our boy Josh Allen. Thank you, Joshua Allen. There's too many Joshes going on right now that I lost his last name. But yeah, Josh Allen. Even though Josh Allen, can make it up with his legs, so I think his floor is a little higher in Sunday's match.
Yeah, and I have a little stat on that. Mike mentioned a key point with Josh Allen and his rushing potential. In windy games, he's played in 13 windy games so far as an NFL quarterback. And in those games, he's had 107 rushing, not passing, rushing attempts for 700 yards. Okay.
Yeah.
With a 6.5 yards per attempt clipped and 5 TDs. So what that's telling us is, hey, Josh Allen can come in clutch here. If he's not able to launch that ball downfield, maybe the game script is a little bit more running and getting him open downfield a little bit to run to make up those fantasy points. Maybe he doesn't get through the air through running. But we don't expect Josh Allen to be throwing 400 yards and 5 TTs in this game.
Yeah, you gotta be a little worried about some of the deep ball here. Guys like John Brown, I'd be a little worried about starting him if he's getting those deep passes. And also on the other side of the coin, some of the wide receivers in the LA Rams, Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods. This is a revenge game for Robert Woods, right? The Bills. But he's got Tre'Davious White on him, so it's going to be a tough matchup for him.
Yeah, right now the Rams have given up the 17th worst as far as they are in 17th place for how many yards they've given up to for quarterbacks, and they're at around 243 yards on average, while the Bills are I just had it here. Buffalo's actually 21st. So these aren't necessarily top 10 passing defenses as far as the number of yards that are given up. So there still could be some yards, but I think we just need to limit expectations for this game.
So trying to get a word in between you two. Hold on a second. I'm gonna start raising my hand so you guys know that I'm trying to talk. I also think.
Hey, Colin, what do you want?
I think Higbee's good.
Hey, Colin, when a train's coming, get out the tracks, bro.
I know. I should just let you guys talk. You know what? I was just gonna say Tyler Higbee's gonna have another great game in my mind. Short passes, but that's it.
Yeah, he absolutely could. Mike, what were you gonna say?
I love Higbee. He's been a red zone monster. He's taken over the Cooper Kupp threat. So I was gonna say last week.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Tyler Higbee
just go ahead, guys. I know you guys are used to not having me in this discussion.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, Tyler Higbee did not get the deep balls. He didn't get a ton of yardage last week. He got 3 touchdowns, though, with short passes. So, I mean, this is the type of game where it's set up for him again.
The question is, can the LA Rams drive the ball to get into the red zone against the Bills? Potentially, we'll update this on Sunday, windy conditions. So will those TD opportunities become capped?
Yeah.
Well, so that's our weather update. That's our impacts that we see for the week. Stay tuned on our social media at FFWeatherguys. Let me just get Sean out of the way so you can see the @ sign. He was covering it up. That's my fault.
As per usual.
And follow us on Twitter, Facebook. We'll be posting like Mike said, our table updates twice a day. If things change, Sunday morning we may come back live if, who knows, the winds really pick up.
Yeah, and just look for us on Sunday. I mean, we usually only on Sundays during really extreme events, but if these winds really pick up, we may do a live Twitch feed if things look interesting.